The following program was pre-recorded to be aired at this time. Material contained therein could be time-sensitive, meaning it could be early, expired, or late. Listeners are advised to pay close attention to the details of the program. Again, this program is pre-recorded. Views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the host and guest, and not necessarily those of the staff and management of JJLN Radio. Time now is 7 p.m. Normally here would be the Lady G Show, but taking the place of Lady G Show is the Angel Café with Cathy Navin. That's right, from now on you're going to be able to tune into this program Saturdays at 7 p.m. And then it's going to be re-telecast the next 6 days, 24 hours a day. The Angel's Café with Cathy Navin. The phone lines are open. You can call in and be a part of the show by dialing 1-888-778-1436. That's 1-388-778-1436. And you can also contribute to support the show financially by using the world-famous silver button at the top left-hand corner of the viewing portal you're now watching. The show will be recorded, so a DVD and audio CDs will be available. We'll talk about that more later, but right now, here we go into the facilities of JJLN Radio, into the studios of BlueMarymare.net for the Angel's Café with Cathy Navin.
My JJLN fans, and welcome to the Everything Veterans Angel Café show. Our guest is an extraordinary, distinguished Purple Heart combat wounded veteran, Lieutenant Commander Len Yelinek. He is the Commander, Department of Nevada, and Commander of Chapter 711, Military Order of the Purple Heart. Welcome to the show, Mr. Yelinek. Please say hello to our audience.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Oh, I'm just thrilled that he's here. I'm both humbled and honored to have him joining me for tonight's historic broadcast. Lieutenant Commander Len Yelinek was in the United States Navy during the Vietnam War from 1968 to 1969. Len was the first public affairs officer for the River Patrol Force. He was severely injured during an ambush and spent several months in the hospital recovering from his wounds. Len Yelinek received a Purple Heart for his injury in the line of duty. After our second break, we will share a video from Voice of the Vet. I will begin a prayer, and then we will go to our guest. This is truly an exciting evening, folks. If you haven't watched this show, you need to share it, because we have an extraordinary, a distinguished Purple Heart veteran with us, and wow, you're in for a fine, fine show. Okay, let's all pray now. Dear God, please bless the veterans who wore the faded uniform. May they know the peace of a career well served and service completed. Give them our thanks for the freedom preserved, future defended, and the ideals embodied. Bless the veterans who defended our country with both strength and devotion. Thank you, Lord, for tonight. Bless this very historic show. Bless our guests and all whom he holds dear. Amen. And now we're going to go to our guests. And first of all, I would say again, welcome to the show. And I'd like you to share anything you wanted to share, but start with a little bit about your career. Why Army?
No, it was Navy.
Why Navy? Why Navy?
Well, you know, I enlisted in the Navy when I was a junior in high school.
Oh my goodness, quite young.
But the reason I enlisted is because I didn't want to go on active duty. I didn't want to be drafted, so I enlisted with the intent of getting my college degree.
Oh, okay.
And the Navy made me a nice offer for weekend drills, and not weekend, but week drills. I think it was every Monday. So I enlisted in the Navy when I was a sophomore in high school, and when I was, and that was in Las Vegas High School.
GOTC then?
No, I did not go through ROTC.
But you just enlisted, yeah.
Yeah, they didn't. They didn't have ROTC, JROTC at high school. That was Las Vegas High School.
Okay.
Which was is the oldest high school in southern Nevada.
Wow. Okay.
So anyway,
and reading your resume, baby.
It's 4500 West Maryland Parkway. That's actually UNLV today.
Oh, that's
when I went
UNLV?
there, it was Nevada Southern University.
I'll be darned.
And when I finished my sophomore year, I went to Newport, Rhode Island, and went through 8 weeks of officer candidate school.
Okay, I know about that school.
And then from there, I had actually, my family had relocated at that time to Mississippi. So I left Rhode Island, went to Mississippi, and when I graduated from the University of Southern Mississippi in Hattiesburg, I was commissioned in Hinson.
Okay.
But I had petitioned the Navy. I said I don't want to go on active duty right away. I'd like to get my master's. They said we're not gonna pay for it. I said I didn't ask you to. just let me stick around. So I spent about a year and a half. I got my master's.
And what subject?
It was in mass communication, radio, TV, journalism.
Okay, all right.
My goal was public relations. And my first the first military post that I went to was actually an Army post. It was Fort Benjamin Harrison in Indianapolis, and that was what they called the Defense Information School.
Okay.
And where all of the branches were there: Air Force, Army, Marine Corps, Navy, and I learned how to run a television station.
Oh my goodness.
And so from there I went to Puerto Rico, and I was the officer in charge of Armed Forces Television
Oh my goodness.
for 2 years.
Wow, this man has an impressive career here. Okay, go on.
It's rather interesting. I was at the Roosevelt Roads Naval Station, which was the largest naval station that the Navy had.
Oh my goodness, okay.
They closed it a few years ago, but it's rather interesting. In addition to being the public affairs officer, I was also the base historian. So
wow.
it was fun reading the history of that base. And I'll just tell you something that's very interesting. Most people don't know this.
Okay.
Let me ask you a question. What if Hitler had been successful in overrunning England? What do you suppose would have happened to the king and queen?
I always feel that we wouldn't live in this America we do today if not for World War II and what was done.
Well, they had contingency plans for the king and queen and for the British fleet. They were going to Puerto Rico.
Oh, really?
And Roosevelt Roads means roadstead, but the Roosevelt Roads Naval Station, Roadstead, was established for the King and Queen of England, the royalty family, and the military from England. And the television station that I was in charge of there was on the highest hill, and it had 6-foot thick walls, and that had been designed as the royal residence. Now there were no royal tapestry or what have you, but
that was the plan.
That had been the plan. So I spent 2 years there, and one day I got a telephone call from the Pentagon. Senior naval captain was in charge of detailing for the Navy. I was, again, my background was public relations, and in the Navy, you're either a line officer or a staff officer. Line officer means you could be the gunnery officer, you could be the engineering officer, you could be the commanding officer of the ship.
Right.
But staff are more the, I was a staff officer, which was public affairs. And there were only about 235 total public affairs officers in the Navy. And I got a call, and he said, Len, we've just had a new position open up. Would you consider going to Vietnam? And I jumped on it. I said, yes, put me down.
Bless your heart.
I was single, but I thought one of these days I'm going to be married, and my children would say, what'd you do during the war, Dad? And I wanted to say, I was there.
Oh, my word.
So I went to
What a patriot. Okay.
So I went to Vietnam, and I was the very first public affairs officer for the River Patrol Force. Now, the River Patrol Force was the Navy's one of the highest casualty branches or units that the Navy had.
And you were the first one there, huh?
Yeah. Well, they were there, but they'd been operating for a couple of years, but they didn't have public affairs.
Okay, so you're the first public affairs.
I was the first public affairs. But the boats that we operated, first of all, in South Vietnam, there are no highways.
Right.
Maybe one or two, but you want to get from point A to point B, you go by sampan or boat.
Yeah.
And not only do the residents go by boat, or were they going by boat, but the enemy, the Viet Cong, they were traveling by boat.
Oh, my goodness.
So
okay.
our purpose was to interdict the enemy, get them out of there, arrest them, and so that they weren't Vietnam.
Right.
But the boats that we had, they were actually pleasure craft that came from Bellingham, Washington.
Oh.
And they were only 31 foot long. But they were retrofitted. They put in twin diesel engines, General Electric, General Motors, and those boats could make a 180-degree turn in their own length.
Okay.
But they didn't stop bullets.
Oh, okay.
And so anyway, a lot of the time I was at a desk or at the photo lab and my journalists and photographers.
Yeah.
But I did get out a lot. Before I went to Vietnam, I went to Miramar Naval Air Station and checked out in the ejection seat.
Oh,
Because
okay.
I knew there'd be planes flying around Vietnam, and I wanted to see as much as I could.
Wow, you were really out there learning the job before you were in it.
Yeah, that's true. And when I first got there, I had nobody to work for me. I preceded all of my employees, so now I've got to set up a photo lab. So I'm driving down the street, and I see an Army photo detachment, and I stopped in, met the commanding officer, and said, "Have you got any spare equipment?" He said, that time I was lieutenant. He said, "Lieutenant, have you got some spare plywood?" I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" He said, "We'd like about 15 sheets of half-inch plywood." Well, let me see. Well, I went back to my base, and I was able to talk the supply officer out of plywood.
Okay.
So they gave me some photo equipment. Then I went to an Air Force base. There was a master sergeant. I said, "Have you got any spare equipment?" "Lieutenant," he said, "I got a film dryer. You got a case of sea rations." We traded things.
You're procuring and trading.
Yeah, and they call it, in the Navy, they call it gumshaw.
Okay.
But one of the unique things is I ordered thousands of dollars of Kodak film while I was in Vietnam, and do you know,
Okay.
I never got one single roll.
That's interesting.
It was all taken off the ships in the harbor. I'm sure
It was stolen.
somebody stole it.
Oh.
So I had to go out into the public realm there and buy film. It probably my film to begin with, but I had to
Buy your own product, find yours back.
Yeah, what I would do, I would get money from the psychological operations department. They had Vietnamese piasters, and so they'd say, "Well, Len, what do you need?" They give me a few thousand piasters.
And you
Of
go
course, a
buy.
few thousand sounds like a lot. That was maybe $20.
Oh, okay.
I was able to buy film,
Okay.
so we got it up and running. Let me talk a little about the job we did over there.
Okay.
Before I went to Vietnam, the nightly newscasts were all about body count. Today, the U.S. forces killed 230 of the enemy, and we lost 4 soldiers.
Yeah.
And I thought, there's more to war than that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of depressing. And so when I got there, I thought, you know what? And another thing too, we've all looked in our daily newspaper, weekly newspaper, what have you, and back on page 23 is a little column called News of Our Servicemen, and you read through it, and it says, "John Jones, son of Dr. and Mrs. Peter Jones."
It's 2 lines.
Was recently promoted to boatswain mate 3rd class, and thought, that's not giving these men that they're just.
Right.
So before I went to Vietnam, I purchased a copy of a book called Ayer's Newspaper Guide, and it listed every newspaper in the United States. The weeklies, the dailies, the Spanish, the trade publications, the automobile industry, the cooking, and I sent out, or I had my people, we sent out a 3-page press release on every one of our men.
Oh, I love that.
Now the first paragraph, and it was a long, maybe the first two paragraphs were all about the man, and we had pictures of him doing what he was doing. If he was a gunner's mate, he was behind the gun. If he did another job, he had his tools in his hand. But the remaining pages were all about what our mission was, and we had pictures of some action photos. So I mailed these. Now normally the naval commands or your Air Force, the Air Force goes sending through Lackland Air Base and Air Force Base. The Navy, they go through Great Lakes. They just generate these press releases that are only two sentences long about the doctor's son that just got promoted. But I bypassed that.
I love it.
I went directly to the newspaper. enclosed an envelope.
Wow.
And even had the postage on it. And if you would send it back to me, we post these in the chow hall. And morale is greatly affected by it. Every week I was getting envelopes. I'd first run them by my commanding officer, say I'm doing my job, and then we post them.
Oh, thank you for doing that. That's huge.
Morale went up 2,000%.
Yeah.
Because that was not a popular war. And I know of many soldiers and sailors and airmen that came back from Vietnam.
Excuse me, we're going to break, folks, but we're going to come right back here and talk to him again, and you're going to continue about getting the news out of these soldiers. So we'll see you again in a few minutes.
It's